Once again, a short thought on Parshat Shavua, and a very relevant thought to Yemei Sfira. In this week's Parsha, we learn the monumental and fundamental mitzvah. V'yohavtu l'reachu kamoicho, and we all remember what Rabbi Kiva says. Yerushalmi Nedom Daf Lamed, Toras Koyanim, Parshat Kedoshim. V'yohavtu l'reachu kamoicho ze klal godol b'Torah. That is the fundamental yesod of Toras Hashem. We are in the midst of Yemei Sfira. These days should have been joyous days, happy days, but they were transformed tragically to Yemei Avelis. At the epidemic that struck Talmidei Rebbe Kiva, the story is told in Yevomis Daf Samach Beis. Yud Beis Elef Zugois Talmidim Hoyol Rebbe Kiva v'Kulam Meisu Ben Pesach Latzeres. And why did tragedy strike? Shaloi Nagu Kavod Zeh B'Zeh. And everyone wonders, is that such a harsh and terrible transgression? Is it Chayev Kores Misa B'Dei Shamayim? Why such a tragic and horrific punishment? I explained many times, to be exposed to greatness, to be Mishamesh Adam Godel, to be close to giants of Torah, is not only a privilege, it is an obligation as well. Not only a schus, but a great responsibility. I heard many times from my great Rebbe, the Divrei Yatz of the Kloiser Mager Rebbe, one of his very earliest recollections as a child. I was sitting in my great father's lap, and my father was crying. And I asked him, Abba, Tata, why are you crying? And he said, I envy you, my dear son. Ich bin dich mekana. And I wondered, and he said, Abba, I should envy you. You're a big Rebbe with many Hasidim, and I'm a little boy. And he said, Zalmaleib, I envy you because you did not see the Divrei Chaim, the Tzanza Zayda. And I was taken aback, and I said once again, this is another reason I should envy you, because you did see the Divrei Chaim. And my father responded, you didn't see the Divrei Chaim. You didn't know him. So what will they demand from you, la'achar mea ve'esrim, in the day of judgment? But I will be asked, you saw the Divrei Chaim. Did you learn anything from him? Is this how a person is after being exposed to greatness, knowing the Gadol Ador? So my feeling is, those 24,000 Talmidim were asked from above, you are Talmidim of the great Rebbe Kiva, and you learned nothing from his ways? Where were you when Rebbe Kiva darshaned v'ahavtu l'reachu kamoicho ze klal godel b'Torah? You didn't hear, you didn't see, and where were you when Rebbe Kiva said in Perek Gimel of Masechet Avos, Chavev Adam shenivra b'tzelem, chibi yaseir naidaslu shenivra b'tzelem elokim? And where were you when Rebbe Kiva in Bava Kama Memalef, in Psochim Chov Beis, in Kedushin Nun Zayin, in Pchoris Davav, says, Es Hashem Elokecho Tiro, Ad shebu Rebbe Kiva v'omer l'rabois talmidei chachamim, no ahavo, no yiru, no kavod. That is why they perished. And in Medrash Koheles Perek Zayin we find, in Yevomis the Gemara says, after all those Talmidim died, Hoyu Olam Shamim, the world was barren from Torah. Ad Shabora Bekiva Etzel Rabbeinu Shebedorim Vishon Elohim. And those were the greatest Tanoim. And their words fill every page in Shas. Rameh Baranes Rabbi Yehuda Bar Elo, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, Rabbi Shimon ben Yechoy, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. And the Medrash in Koheles says, when they came together to Rabbi Kiva in his elderly years, he pleaded and he begged, I don't have koyach for another tragedy. Atem al tiyu kemoisam. Please learn to respect each other, to love each other. I will not survive another tragedy. How were they? I looked through Shas and Midrashim, and I came up with an unbelievable feeling and revelation. Let's have a look at what the Talmidim have to say. Rameh Baranes, number 1, first and foremost, in Tanchu Parshas V'Yachi, Kol HaMavoreches Yisrael Kilo Mavoreches HaShechina. Number 2, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Iloi. Medrash Shir HaShirim, Perik Beis, Kol HaMakabel Pnei Chaveru Kilo Makabel Pnei HaShechina. It is the Talmidim that are speaking, but we could hear the baskol of the great Rebbe. Following in Rabbi Akiva's footsteps, he is the one that said, Chav Avodam Shenivra B'Tselem, B'Tselem Elokim Mosas Adam. Reb Meir is an echo, HaMavoreches Yisrael Kilo Mavoreches HaShechina, because every Jew has Shechina. Every Jew has a Selem Elokim. Kol HaMakabel Pnei Chaveru Kilo Makabel Pnei HaShechina. And then comes along Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, number 3, Shabbos Kuf Yudches. Mi yomai lo yovarti al divrei chaverai. Yodei ani batzmi sheneni kohen. Em yoimru lo chaverai alei leduchan hayisi oilo. Do you know anybody that could say, Ma oilam lo ovarti al divrei chaverai? Not divrei rabosai, divrei chaverai. Who's next in line? Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Many times in Shas. Noyach leila odam sheyap al asatzmo lekivshan oish v'lo yalbem pnei chaveroi barabim. Rebbe Loza ben Arach. He is the one that teaches us a Masechet Avos. Yehei kvoi talmidecho chova v'lecho. Not only the respect and honor of your elders, of your rabbeim, your students, your children, they deserve respect as well. That was the Torah of Rabbi Seinu Shebedorim, and that is why they were Zoicha to what the 24,000 were not. 24,000 Talmidim perished. We don't even know their names, and we don't know what they said. 5 Talmidim. Kol Torah Kula is their Torah. Sanhedrin Pevov we learn. Mishnah Tosefta Sefro Sefri. That is the Torah of Rabbi Seinu Shebedorim. Because they loved and were mechabed one another. And that is why they were Zoichem. Another amazing story about Kvoid Chaverem and Aves Reim of Rebbe Akiva's later Talmidim. Chagiget Tesvavo mit Beis Yerushalmi. Reb Meir and Reb Yochanan Yasandler had a vikuach and halacha. And the vikuach was about the opinion of Rebbe Akiva in a certain halacha. Reb Meir says this, Rabbi Yochanan Sandler says that different. And Rabbi Yochanan Sandler says, Ani shimashti et Rabbi Akiva oimdois mashalo shimashto yoshvois. I was mishamish Rabbi Akiva far more than you, and I am more familiar with his Torah than you are. This was quite a harsh machlokes. But the Yerushalmi says, Omdu sham ben eshika. They kissed each other when they parted. Beroiv ahava. And if one of them didn't have a beged to warm his body, he didn't have a blanket, his friend cut his garment in half to share it with his friend. That was the love, the respect that the later Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva had for one another. So an epidemic struck the Torah world in the days of Rabbi Akiva. 24,000 perished. When was it over? Shechanoch says, Tov Tzadik Gimel Lag Ba'omer, Pasku Lamus. Why Lag Ba'omer? A week ago, and many times before, I spoke about Mem Chezvorim Shetoyre Nikneis Behem, coinciding with Mem Tes Yemei Asvira. That's what many Gedoyle Musa and Chasidus teach us. I assume Rebbe Akiva taught the same. So if you will count from number 1, Mem Chezvorim Shetoyre Nikneis Behem, realize 32 is Oyev Esabriyos. 32 days of Omer, the Talmidim worked on Aves Abrias. One day later, the plague was over. That's the Zgula. So when we are noig minhagi avelis, it is time to do some avoida, reflection, introspection, and avis chaverim and kavod chaverim. This epidemic in many places of the world is still raging. The matzav in South America is horrific. Some European countries, Baruch Hashem and Eretz Yisrael, we almost seem to be out of the woods, and I know that in America the matzav is much better. But we could still use some sgulas. And one of them is Nahagu Kavod Zeh B'Zeh. So now is the time. More Ahavas Reim, more Kavod Chaverim. And we should be Zoicha Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yimna'ma Geifo Menach L'Seinu. Have a beautiful Shabbos. Good Shabbos to everyone.